Welcome to Study with the Best, the magazine show that's all about CUNY. I'm Tina Beth Pina. With the presidential election right around the corner, we decided to look at politics through the CUNY lens. We'll see what the connection is between data maps and the election, see a political journalist in action, visit a political archive, and so much more. But first, visual journalist Natalie Fertig shares her experience on the presidential campaign trail and what makes a photo or video so powerful.
I grew up watching TV news. Apparently, that was the only way to get me to be quiet as a 3-year-old. It was either be a history professor and study, news that had already been written to tell me the story of people who lived a long time ago, or go out and be the first draft of history. And I tell everyone to go here. I feel like I came out of CUNY with not just one journalism skill, but a whole array of journalism skills. The thing that I'm most attracted to, especially as a visual journalist, when I'm out at a rally or I'm out on the trail, are the Americans who come out to support or to learn or to protest a politician at a rally. There was a lot of times where all of the photographers would post up in a specific angle and I'd be somewhere completely different. Stills freeze a moment, and video shows the whole moment. I particularly enjoyed covering Senator Marco Rubio because of his family. There was one clip that I shot in, I believe, New Hampshire. It's him and then his wife and then each kid consecutively, and it just gets smaller. All of that body language is going to come through, and it's going to tell you something about that candidate and about his family that a photo wouldn't. When you're out on the campaign trail, you still have a lot of questions. And I feel like as a journalist, that's should be the basis for most of the stories you do. They come in, you shoot the event, and then the candidate leaves, and you go, I wonder where they're going now. Or I wonder how many events they've done today. Or I wonder what they do between events. That's your job to find out, because no one else is gonna tell you, because you're the journalist. I covered the RNC and then the DNC. I was the only person from our video department to cover both of them, so I was pretty exhausted by the last day of the DNC. And so I'd sort of thought to myself, I'm not going to be on the floor for Hillary's speech. That's fine. I did Obama last night. I was there for Biden. I was there for Michelle. I was there for Trump last week. And I'm sitting there, and she comes up on TV, and everyone's clapping, and she starts giving her speech. And suddenly, I went, what the hell am I doing? This is the first female candidate. Like, whether I love her or I hate her, I'm a female journalist, and she's the first female candidate of a major party. This is history. This is why I got into journalism. Like, no matter my political party leanings, this is why I got into journalism, is to be there for these moments. What the hell am I doing? I grabbed my camera and I ran. I just booked it over there, and I got there about halfway through the speech and got a good vantage point. That's what I like about covering the campaign, is trying to find those moments where politicians are the same as you, or where Trump supporters are the same as you, or where Sanders supporters are the same as you. I just was sent to take some portraits and some shots of Bernie Sanders being interviewed. And yeah, I didn't actually expect to be in his office for an hour. You don't normally get that amount of time as a photojournalist. You have to play the line between getting what you need and not annoying them so that you can continue to get what you need in the future. He was very nice. He told me that my photos were going to be fantastic before he even saw any of them. I think that the one thing that the media could and should do more is remember who we're talking to. And when I'm making a video, I'm thinking of my friends, the ones I grew up with, the ones who care, but between work and getting the kids off to school and spending time with your family, there's not a lot of room in there to sit down and read the New York Times. What do they not know? What do they need to know? What is imperative that they know to be an informed voter? I have friends who say, if Trump's in the White House, I'm gonna go to Canada. And it's like, no, if Trump's in the White House, you stay. and you report. If Hillary's in the White House, you stay and you report. Like, if you wanted one of them to win and not the other one, it doesn't matter. You stay and you report and you fact check and you call them out, because that's how we keep America in check. So, yeah, that's my very idealistic answer to your question.
The Baruch College Library archives are home to a treasure trove of documents and records. One collection in particular highlights a visionary who transformed how government works.
The collection encapsulates the history of government reform in America. The people who organized the Institute of Public Administration and its forerunner, which was called the Bureau of Municipal Research, organized it as a way of getting back against Tammany corruption and bossism in New York. They try to come up with a way of making government more efficient, effective, transparent. The Bureau of Municipal Research started in the early 1900s. About 1916, it attracted a young student of government and administration named Luther Gulick. He was very interested in how government worked, how it really worked, and how to make it better, how to make it more responsive to people. He attended the first class of the training school. Their idea was government should be professionalized. It should not be a place where, relatives of the mayor get hired, a place for nepotism. It should be a place where professionals, people who studied government, can operate. Gillick quickly applied this knowledge to running government from behind the scenes. He was not a politician. He never ran for anything, but he made government work. His big issue was, how do you translate policy into action? This is the core of Gillick's contribution. Once a policy was adopted, how do you translate that into effective action? That was his big concern, which is really important and interesting, because politicians can come up with bills and laws all the time, but how do you translate it into fact and action? He started off actually working for Woodrow Wilson in World War I. He was on the statistics side, telling the White House of President Wilson how the war was going. He went to Washington when Roosevelt became president, and he became a key advisor to Roosevelt. It was Gillick's idea to take the president away from the center of the organizational chart, where all agencies reported directly to the president, and create a council of advisors who would really deal with all the important issues that they could take off the shoulders of the president. That was the creation of Gillick and his Committee on Administrative Management. The executive, the president, the three branches, and coming from the president, there are all these other agencies: National Emergency Council, Information Service, the military departments, Treasury, etc., and they all report through a chain of command up to the president. He was instrumental during the war in figuring out what are the mechanics of converting a plant that produced civilian material immediately to military goods, because there was no time to waste. Exactly how do you do? Who reports to whom? After World War II, he was involved in manpower planning. What are we going to do with all these thousands of troops coming home? How are we going to find employment for them? He was instrumental in the GI Bill, getting them education. After that, he went to work for the City of New York. He became the first public administrator of the City of New York. He worked for Robert Wagner. They reorganized New York City the way he reorganized the federal government. New York has the shape it has today because of the innovations that Gillick and his associates put in place in the 1950s. We got the collection. We heard about it some years ago. It was being stored in a Queens warehouse. Carnegie Corporation of New York gave us a very generous grant to retrieve 700 boxes of materials thrown together, disorganized, in terrible repair. We went through box by box. We preserved photographs. We reorganized it into smaller boxes, acid-free by archival standards, to preserve it, keep them from deteriorating. So we now have the collection organized. We're methodically digitizing it. so it can be searched online. We found original posters of World War II for war bonds. We found food records of how we were feeding 300 million people in Europe. Gillick was central in that. We're very happy to have this collection and other important collections here because we have a very close relationship to the School of Public and International Affairs. Our materials are available to their students. We're in a very good place for that. Baruch has a very renowned School of Public and International Affairs, so it's a good place for the archives. The value of this collection, to me, is that it reinforces the power of government. Why do we even have government? There are people today who say we should drown government in a bathtub, famous quote, that government is dysfunctional, it's no good, get government out of the way. This is a throwback to time when government was vital to the survival of this country. What government can do, what it should do, what people can't do for themselves. Everything from education, school organization, to pensions, to all the things that government has to do for people. It's a time when people had faith in government, and government returned that faith by performing for people. But how government can operate, how it should operate, how smart people can make government operate better. And that's what Gillick was dedicated to.
Lawyer and adjunct professor Jaime Estades founded the Latino Leadership Institite to empower minorities with the knowledge needed to run for office.
I always saw lack of social justice in the United States. By getting elected, you have access and the opportunity to create new laws and new legislations and policies that are going to affect everybody. So we have 2 semesters. The first semester is basically during the summer, in which we teach people about the mechanics of how to run for office. And the second one is about public policy, because we believe that if you run for office, you also need to understand the basics of public policy in education, healthcare, housing, etc. That way we can produce a complete candidate. Everybody can come to our classes without having to pay a penny. It's volunteer work, and we have been doing it for 6 years. And we have been producing little by little new leadership, especially in New York. And now we have a chapter in Central Florida, in Orlando. It's very important to say that the Latino Leadership Institite is only by name. You come to one of our classes, 1/3 is Latino, 1/3 is African American, and 1/3 is white and Muslim and Asians. We have a lot of students who have been doing great. Michelle Gilliam is now the Deputy Director for Labor in the Hillary Clinton campaign. We have Sameli Lopez in the Bronx, who ran for district leader and was elected as a committee woman. She's a true activist, and most of our students are like that.
I've always had an interest to fight for the underdog ever since I was little, and part of that is because of my personal story. I actually ended up living in the shelter system when I was growing up because my mom was a domestic violence survivor, so that's where we had to go to kind of like escape the abuse that was going on. And having access to public services and governmental assistance like definitely helped me stay on the right path and helped me not to become a statistic. And that's something that really empowered me and showed me the value of the government and community services and community advocacy. I ran for female district leader in the 78th Assembly District of the Bronx. It was an amazing adventure. I ended up biking all over the district to get my message across and to connect with voters. But one thing that I found out is that a lot of voters don't know basic things in terms of how names even get on ballots. I also had to educate people about the process. And I feel that if more people knew how names get on ballots and how the process looks like from A to Z, maybe they'll have the confidence and they'll trust a little bit more that, no, you're giving me your signature, but you're not voting for me. This is just so my name can be on the ballot, so when you go to vote in September, whenever the election is, you can have choices. It's not only important to vote in the presidential election, it's critical to vote in the local election. Change starts from the bottom up. So in order to make changes in our country and politics, you have to start looking locally. And if you elect enough progressive leaders at the hyper-local levels of politics and government, maybe things will start happening. You'll see the progressive changes that need to happen in this country. I'm so proud of the results that I got, because I basically demonstrated that you don't need to raise a lot of money and you don't need to be beholden to special interests or big money to get your message across. If you have that spark, if you have that energy and passion, nothing should stand in your way, and a barrier to entry in the political world or in community advocacy should it never be lack of knowledge. So institutions like the Latino Leadership Institute are great in that sense, because they empower you and give you the courage to arm yourself with the information that you need so you can keep moving forward and accomplish your goals.
What can we learn about the election through data maps? CUNY Center for Urban Research shows us how they navigate the polls.
Data is really important because it enables us and other organizations like us to not only get the big picture around a particular issue or trend, but also drill down and look closely at one particular aspect of it.
The Center for Urban Research at the CUNY Graduate Center works with faculty and graduate students to organize basic research on the critical issues facing New York and other large cities in the U.S. and abroad. It also collaborates on applied research and information dissemination with public agencies, nonprofit organizations, foundations, the media, and other partners.
The Center for Urban Research has always put a high priority on trying to access large, interesting, useful data sets that give us a practical understanding of what's happening with New York City's population. How are people moving in and out of the city? What issues are they interested in? What's going on with immigration and how has that been changing, and what does that mean for political organization and social service delivery and things like that.
Back in 2013, the Urban Research Center created a joint project with the CUNY Graduate School of Journalism and the Center for Community and Ethnic Media called NYC Election Atlas. It provides a series of interactive maps and analysis about the mayoral election in New York City, which reveals how several candidates have fared in the elections.
The New York City Board of Elections, just like other boards of elections around the state and the country, they collect information on the number of votes for each candidate by election district, which are pretty small areas. And they also collect information on voter registration, your age and gender, and then they build up a voting history. And so we created a couple of dozen maps and demographic analysis of each neighborhood in the city and for a number of interesting elections in the past. So you could see district by district locally throughout the 5 boroughs how people voted for John Liu or Bill de Blasio or Anthony Weiner.
Since then, Steven and his team have been updating the maps to look more closely on a couple of specific elections. They have mapped the statistics on the 2014 New York City 11th Congressional District election, the 2014 through 2016 New York City 13th Congressional District election, and the 2016 presidential primary election in New York City and New York State.
The basic way is to just look at the vote results. Who voted for who, what the percentage of people voting for Hillary Clinton, let's say, was in each election district throughout the city. But then you can also compare that, and you can take those election districts, which are pretty small and more or less fit within census tracts, and you can say for each census tract where the population was predominantly black or Asian or Hispanic, how did that tract vote? You could do the same thing with income characteristics, with education characteristics, with household structure. So in this case, the dark green areas are where Clinton did very well, and the orange and red areas are where she did poorly, where Bernie Sanders won. Well, let's say this is the Upper East Side, where she did very well, and so you can see that that area is predominantly white, of Italian, Irish, basically Catholic, and Russian, Ukrainian, Polish ancestry, basically Jewish. With Donald Trump, he did better statewide on a percentage basis. I think he got about 60% of the Republicans who turned out to vote, but the total number of people who voted for him were much lower than the number of Democrats who voted for Hillary Clinton. And He got most of his vote support in areas like Long Island, the suburbs of the city, and in some upstate areas, predominantly western New York.
New York City's rich immigrant community plays a significant role in determining the outcome of the mayoral, borough, council, and presidential races. The NYC Election Atlas provides a detailed picture of both the ethnic makeup and the voting trends of the city's neighborhoods.
One of the campaign consultants in 2013 said it's like a drug for campaign consultants. Like looking at that, they could just get addicted to seeing all these maps and poring over the patterns. But at the same time, I think it's of interest to the general public because it's, people can get a sense of how their neighborhoods have voted, and it's a reflection of the city, of how people think and how what their perceptions are regarding politics, and therefore how we're governed.
While the craft of puppet making can be used for storytelling, it can also be a powerful tool for activism and social practice. The students in the art program at Queens College show us how.
We strive to make sure that our students are not just being prepared to be art teachers, but they're being prepared to be highly effective art teachers that are going to make a difference in their communities. Not just teachers that are going to go out and teach about visual arts, but teachers that are going to be able to reach their students and really use art as a vehicle for transformation. Puppet making has been happening for centuries. Bread and Puppets, that's a theater company that started here in New York, actually, in the 60s. And the whole idea was that they used these really oversized puppets to get attention and to protest against things like the Vietnam War and about environmental issues. And they found that when they used these big puppets, that people paid attention to them and remembered their message, and that when they went to protest also, that law enforcement didn't take them and they didn't sort of make them go away. The whole concept here at Queens College and in our art education department, where we teach people who are art teachers, is to help them use that same concept, to go into classrooms and to teach their students how to use their hands and build puppets to send messages of their own. In some cases about politics, in some cases about the environment, in other cases just about what they feel, but to be able to tell stories.
I've already started implementing craft into my curriculum. My elementary schoolers we really don't usually do a lot of craft, and now I've been incorporating it much more, and I find that they are much more fulfilled in what they create. It's a very important art form throughout many different cultural backgrounds. I have students from various cultures, and I thought it would be a good way to get them excited about different projects that we would be doing.
We all in our positions. Positions, everybody, positions.
Crafts oftentimes are seen as something that only small children do, or that isn't as important as major artworks that you see at museums. It's considered high and fine art. So we want to make sure that they value crafts and that they get exposure to it. So that's one, but also as a university, we think it's really important that when our teachers go to teach students, mostly in public schools, they go with these strong social values and hopefully pass these social values on to their own students so they can then be informed citizens and be empowered to make choices for themselves and for their communities versus just being subject to the decisions that other people make for them.
That's our show for today. For more information on what you just saw, check out our website at CUNY.tv or visit our Study with the Best Facebook page. Thanks for watching. See you next time. Bye.